I'm going to talk about innovative design, focusing on our practice. So I want to start off with a quote by one of the masters in our industry. Dining is and always was a great and artistic opportunity. I think this speaks a lot because a lot of our masters in our industry were actually not professional chefs, but also did cooking as well. So I want to start off with two images here. On the left, you see a food photo that I did because I went to culinary school after I did architecture, which I'll explain a little later on. But how many people here have two conflicting interests that they don't think would get along? I'm sure there are many, including me. I didn't think these two industries would go together, but afterwards I pursued my dreams, and this is what I do now. So don't give up. You could study one thing after the other or study both during university. So here in this photo, you could see 4 of the disciplines that I do in the art field. Nowadays, I think art really, or any discipline, you need to have more than one skill set, I think. In here, you could see there's architecture, interior design, food, and also product design. And then within that, you also see there's graphic design that's done for the presentation. And then also photography that was used to document some of these works. So I started off, I was lucky enough that both my parents are in the industry. My dad is an architect, and my mom is an interior designer. So as a kid, I always grew up, going out to the dining room late at night, seeing my parents working. It is a long-hour industry. So when they work, I would try to pull up a chair next to them and, paper and color pencils and start trying to imitate what they do. But of course, I wasn't professionally trained like them, so I could just kind of watch and try to ask and see if I could help, but of course they would say no. So this was the first shop I remember my dad designing and opening up for Nike. Interestingly enough, we came a full circle, and now Nike is actually our client, and we've done some interesting projects with them. And then next, I think it's kind of where everybody else in here is right now, school life. I think IB was one of the most important 2 years of my life, I have to say. I think for you guys, you could start considering it as well. The classes you take will impact kind of the credits you will get in college. And I think your parents will appreciate you guys saving them a bit of money, getting some of the classes out of the way. But I think for me, because I did architecture, I knew from a younger age I wanted to get into the industry. So a lot of the classes I took were kind of related to that. Art, physics, math. I think economics was the only one that didn't really apply in this field. And then next comes college life. It is the best time of your life, regardless of what everybody says. Please enjoy it. This is where I learned a lot of what I showed you in the earlier slide. Architecture, obviously, is what I studied, but then from that, you kind of go down in scale, and then it goes into interior design, which is the study of interior spaces, and then product design, which is related to that, because we learn a lot about the materials that we use, and so we understand their structures. And then also the next thing is graphic design, which is kind of a smaller scale because we have to put together a lot of presentations and competitions. So we learn how to put together things so that when critics come, they know where to look at and where the important information is. And I think one important thing that I learned was teaching. I recently just became an assistant lecturer at Polytechnic University in Hong Kong. So I just want to give a round of applause to all the teachers that are in here. They do a wonderful job. As much as everybody hates teachers, I have so much respect for them. It is very hard to get students to listen to you and kind of do what you want and to impart your knowledge onto them. And then after that, as I mentioned, I kind of branched off. After college, I went to culinary school, studied for a year, and then went into a kitchen for a year. Learned a lot, met a lot of new friends, made new relationships. And I think in here, I definitely expanded my horizon a lot, and I will explain kind of why these two industries I see go hand in hand. And the next thing, in 2011, my dad approached me. He is already an interior designer, so I don't know why he approached me to do one of his projects. Luckily enough, it was a warehouse he bought. He's a big art collector, and also he likes to entertain guests. So he came to me, son, I have a 5,000 square foot space. Please design it so that I can entertain guests, come work on weekends, and then also room for storage. So that was in 2011, and we weren't even back in Hong Kong at this time, so it was actually really hard for us to work with my two partners because we're all in different cities doing our own jobs at the time. And then in 2012, we moved to Hong Kong, and the rest was history, and now we're where we are. So why design is like cooking? So in the design kind of process, there's many steps you go through, and the first thing is programming, which you do on a study basis in school, but in real life, your client comes to you with the program already, so that's out of the way. But then for cooking, you kind of have to either go online and search what you want to cook, or the best way I find is go into the market, seeing what's fresh that day and what you can actually use. You don't necessarily have to think of what you want to cook yet, but at least buy the best products first. And then I think the next process is kind of, once you see what you need to do, then you kind of take a step back and think how you can do this. So this example is a dim sum cart that we did. So the exercise was related to Hong Kong, and that was kind of the most generic, I guess, program you could be given is Hong Kong. So I kind of thought a little bit more. I wanted to really kind of indulge in Hong Kong, especially these dim sum carts. They don't really exist much around Hong Kong now. And then from the cooking side, once you gather all your vegetables, then you could maybe go back online and do some research if you want, or kind of pull through your head and see what recipes or ideas you have. And then the next thing, once you know what you want to do, you kind of experiment doing different variations. And then that's what we call design development. So here I kind of did variations of the cart, many carts, many dim sum trays, going to dim sum restaurants, eating all I can. And then on the right-hand side, the cooking it's the preparation. You could cut your vegetables different ways. You could kind of, freeze it. You could, whatever process you want before you actually cook it. And I think these two are very similar. And of course, the next thing is construction for architecture. But then in the kitchen, it's actually the cooking process or the cooling process, whatever you want to do to impart flavor and the final product. And of course, you have the complete product, which on the left you could see our dim sum cart we did for an exhibition in Hong Kong, and the right was a duck confit dish I did maybe 5 years ago when I had a lot more time before I went into architecture and interior design. And so now I kind of want to go through some of our projects that we've done. So this is my high school that I went to, or elementary, middle, and high school that I went to. So this cafeteria hasn't been updated for about 20 years since I've been there. The school now is 25 years old. And so here you could kind of see in the cafeteria there's a lot of lines and old-style tables, a low ceiling, mix and match chairs. And here you could see it's just a very mundane ceiling. The only part of design you could see is maybe the maps, if you were into geography, I think. But for when we were kids, the art was actually during a food fight, if you will. A lot of especially when it was Jello day, a lot of jelly would be stuck onto the ceiling. So it's a really nice painting when you look up. But then we came in and we decided, it's part of an educational process as well for the kids. So we wanted to kind of open up the ceiling so it doesn't feel as kind of cramped, but at the same time kind of giving a very welcoming environment for having lunch or even a recess break. And also recreating the lunch line so that there's no congestions. You don't need to use these bands to kind of create the lines. And then also teaching the kids that when you actually get food, it's not you just get it and you go, but they also have to learn how to pay. So we wanted to kind of introduce the cashier system because previously, your parents would get the bills at the end of the semester or beginning. What do you want to eat? Sign up for that, and that's how it was. But then we wanted to try to educate the students as well. And in our school isn't that big, so classrooms was always unavailable, especially for parent-teacher associations, because they are important, but they're not given a classroom because they're not really learning. So we created the space in the cafeteria where they could meet, and afterwards they could just open this up, and then students can come in for lunch or break. This is a retail restaurant we did in Shanghai. So it was a seafood concept restaurant, shop. So we wanted to try to really impart that experience you get when you're underwater. Being a scuba diver, I kind of see these buoys when we're kind of underwater. But we really wanted to replicate that New England feel where it's all these lobster buoys hanging. So we created that as a centerpiece. And because it was they were selling frozen seafood in Shanghai. It was kind of a new concept to them. So they wanted a test kitchen where they could explain to their clients, this is what you can do. Frozen seafood is not bad for you, but you just process it differently. And we've also combined their office into the same space so that they don't have to travel between the office and the retail shop to do the management. This is one of our first restaurants that we did in Hong Kong 3 years back. So their original restaurant is located in the building adjacent to this. But back in 2012 in Hong Kong, it was very popular for private dining in a lot of these spaces where people would open restaurants without a license, just so that they could serve people and impart their knowledge onto everybody else. And then I think a lot of times when we, as a chef, kind of creating an atmosphere, once you're in the restaurant, the atmosphere is set, you don't really get to change it. So we wanted to have something interesting where the table here actually changes color and brightness depending on the dish. The chef can actually adjust this from inside the kitchen so that it's a very customized dinner experience. And then in the process of that, they actually acquired the floor above, and we thought, you can't really do two kitchens together, but rather we wanted to have people where you can't get 10 or 12 people together for a private dinner experience this on a smaller scale where you're sharing this table with a lot of other people, but you could experience that with 4 to 5 people. And then also up top, they also had the rooftop level where for the 5th floor people, when they finished, they could kind of come up here and have drinks. And now, actually, there are 2 walls flanking this building, and now they use them for movie projection and movie nights when it's warm enough. So you can see here there are carts that we've used as a seating, and I'll go into the carts a little later on. But the fascination of carts kind of began when we moved to Hong Kong. Being in an industrial area where our office was, there was a lot of deliveries in and out, and so we would see carts day in and day out, and that kind of became an object that we really wanted to place in some of our projects. This is our most recent food project that I've done, and this one I got a little bit more involved. I was involved with the menu planning as well. And I think for a restaurant, I think going back to that first quote I had, the reason why I think a restaurant really has a lot of those elements is, as you can see on the table, there are obviously silverware and chinaware, and those also have to be chosen, normally by the restaurant, but if you wanted to kind of have it part of the design, we would kind of do the whole package. And then also on the right-hand side there, we had a local graffiti artist come in and do something that related to the interior of our project, where a lot of those you see are the old Chinese windows, and we've used those as kind of an inspiration for the space. So you could see a lot of our partitions are done with this old Hong Kong-style windows. And also a lot of the mahjong tables, if some of you play mahjong, this is kind of the finishes on the table that we see in Hong Kong. And I just want to finish off with some of our installation art, where I think a lot of times we try to combine things that don't normally go together. And I think that's similar to what I tried combining with my 2 passions. I think a lot of times you could find things that were from the past but could be brought back. And I think even back then, those people didn't think that their products would last this long. But as a product designer, I think that's something you want your customers to feel, is they could use it forever. In Hong Kong, there are a lot of these stalls you see on the bottom right. They sell things ranging from costumes, Halloween costumes, to phones, to anything you could think of. You could find one stall in Hong Kong that will sell these. And we've kind of taken that and reimagined it and creating a structure that you could kind of just put these wooden pellets on. So it's a very environmentally friendly project. But then the problem we thought was when you live above one of these stalls, you don't actually get a nice view when you look down. It's just kind of flat roofs. So we wanted to really think of how we can make it pleasing for people above. So we actually added a garden on top so that you don't just see a flat roof. And I think this is another one of our Pushcart fascination projects. Wanted to try to do an installation. This was a very conceptual project that we did. We wanted to do an installation where we had a park, and then people could kind of come in and reimagine this park the way they would want. And we would have elements like, seating areas, a little garden, or even a hut where you could kind of gather with people, or even just relax on a weekend. So On that left-hand side image, you could see that the blocks have all been moved around to recreate the space to suit the needs of the users. This one was actually an interesting project as it came to us while I was traveling, and I didn't really know what to say when a supplier of ours came to us saying, we have a chair for you, would you be interested in redesigning it? But when I was thinking, it was already designed as a very nice and professional chair, how could I reimagine it? So I thought, imparting some of our design elements, we use a lot of industrial elements, so we've reimagined the chair with kind of a concrete back and then a copper legs. So the idea is that when you first take a look at this chair from the back, you're going to think it's a very uncomfortable chair, but in reality, we didn't touch the ergonomics of the chair, so sitting in the front is still just as comfortable as was designed. And the last project I want to talk about is the dim sum pushcart, which I think if anybody has been to Hong Kong, they will know, or at least back in the day, they will know these pushcarts. It's something that is very hard to come by in Hong Kong now, I think due to health and safety regulations. I really wanted to recreate that. And in Hong Kong, there's also a shortage of restaurant spaces due to the fact that the real estate prices are so high, nobody can really rent these spaces. So I thought, why not do a moving restaurant that, especially without a license in Hong Kong, you need to run away. So the idea is that if customers were eating there and you're serving them, if any of these customs officers come by, you could just kind of push them away and run away with them, and they could still be enjoying their food and not knowing what's going on. So that was the reason behind this, and I thought, and it actually was very popular in Hong Kong, and I'm hoping it'll travel to Chengdu and also Bangkok very soon. Thank you very much.